Hey, so welcome everyone. This is Safe EMDR with couples, working with couples. And my name is Deb Kennard, and I'm really happy to be here today. I am excited to share some new ways that I'm seeing this concept, and this recording will also be on our distance learning. It's kind of to update our distance learning portal. And so we'll have this as a distance learning. So many of you who are watching it will actually be seeing it as a result of that. So welcome, wherever you're watching from, whoever you are. And I would like to get started with a mindfulness. And with with everything that we do, especially if you're on a webinar, everything is optional, and we'd like to invite you to join us. But we can't even see you, so whatever you're doing out there, keep doing. But I would like to invite you to join in this. And the reason that the mindfulness experiences are important for therapy and for therapists is that being here can be one of the most important tools. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, or a lot about that actually, that's one of the most important resources, is being in this present moment and being able to be here and be with what's here. So I am going to start off. I have my great big bell today. Ah. We'll ring this to begin and ring it to end. As you hear the bell fading out, I would just like to invite you to begin bringing your attention to being here, to yourself. And just, if possible, with curiosity, noticing where your attention goes. What tells you you're here? Maybe it's something outside of you. Right now I'm hearing the chimes on my porch ringing in the wind. I'm hearing a slight hum of the dishwasher. It's supposed to be a quiet one. And I'm kind of noticing you out there. And as I sense that, I sense it kind of in my forehead, and it's almost like a lightness or an airiness there, sensing you out there. So I'd like to invite you to notice your experience of being here. And now I'm noticing kind of a settling in my core, almost like a downward flow of settling internally. And I'm noticing kind of the heaviness of my shoulders as I notice, it's almost like a sense of gravity in my body. happens for you? Now I would like to invite you to notice any parts of you that maybe you don't pay attention to normally. Maybe they're little ones. Maybe they're older ones. And if possible, with an open curiosity, inviting them to be here. And what do you notice as you invite them? What changes? And what gift do they have for you? So in a moment, I'll ring the bell, and you can take all the time you need. Okay. The bell continue to fade out. Go back in its spot. So welcome everyone. I see some more people are here. I'm really happy to be here today. It's my intention to invite you to be collaborative in this webinar. You're here for a reason. My guess is you would like to learn how to apply this model to your clients or maybe yourself. And so if that's the case, I would like to invite you as I'm talking, to maybe think about a case you would like to present, or think about a question you have about this, of how to apply it to yourself even or others. And to participate, I'd like to invite you to be here and connect with me today. So this webinar is going to be some about connection, really, because we're talking about couples. And if at any time anything annoying is happening, I would really appreciate if you'd let me know. For instance, sometimes I'll start talking about something and maybe I haven't covered it yet. And it's not necessary that you've been to one of our trainings in order for you to be here today. So if I'm talking about something you don't understand, please ask. Maybe others are feeling the same. And I do have a PowerPoint. I sent out the handouts. Hopefully all of you received those. I'm going to share my screen. And we're going to use the PowerPoint as a loose guide and not be tied to it. Okay, so sometimes my best inspiration in teaching is because of your questions. So we may go on different topics or different ways of applying this to different cases. But let's start off with sharing. All right, so this is EMDR therapy, not basic training, safe approach with couples, and the somatic and attachment focus with couples. So what to expect? To learn a little bit about PTI, very little, because most of you know about it, but some don't. So I want to cover that real quickly. To learn a lot about the SAFE model and about how to apply it to couples. And to take a break every 50 minutes and time to ask questions and present cases. So PTI was developed in 2014. I developed Personal Transformation Institute initially to offer EMDR basic trainings. And I was a HAP trainer for Humanitarian Assistance Program for EMDR for about 7 years and traveled around and did trainings for them. And this came out of that because I saw some things that were missing and there were some limitations with that way of teaching for me. So we have the EMDR basic training, and the important thing about it is it's IMDRIA approved. And another important thing about it is it's a result of also 4.5 years of studying sensory motor psychotherapy and about 9 years of doing Vipassana meditation, which is a mindfulness meditation type of meditation that is very somatic also. So all of those things come into play along with yoga. Yoga is also a part of my history and a part of what informs all that we do. So we have the basic trainings, and then things just kind of kept unfolding. Mostly, almost the only reason they kept unfolding was because I saw that there was more of a need. So one of the things that was needed was to have a seamless way to get certified after taking the basic training. So there's lots of things we offered. One of the things that was really important was to offer a video vault for the basic training. So all of our trainings, there are multiple examples of all of our trainings in our basic training portal. And then we also have advanced training portals, which this training will be in. And whenever someone signs up for a training, they have access for a year. So after a year, you can, you can still remain involved if you'd like to by, taking another training. So we have a certification package that we offer to have a seamless way. And then we have an opportunity to become an assistant or an approved consultant through IMDRIA, through our training, and then to become a PTI trainer. But the important thing is that we have one way, and it's a way to go on in our model, but it's not the only way. So some things that we're missing that we are continuing to include into our trainings are a wider lens. How can you kind of look at more than just the content, more than just what people are saying, more than just the client's symptoms, widen the lens to understand it more. And a concept to simplify ways to identify patterns. And having a concept, I'm finding, is so powerful because you can have all the details, you can have all the methods, you can have all of the techniques, but if you don't have an overarching concept, it's really difficult for people to get it. And so a concept that will explain in a simplified way all of these deeper things is a really important part of our way. And then a way to conceptualize and work with somatic resources, or the somatic resource, and an understanding of complex trauma, how to fit that into all things that we teach, and the importance of the therapist, experience and influence. Your experience right now, not just your experience as a therapist throughout the years, although that's important too. And then principles for effective therapy. This is something that just came out of nowhere about a month ago or so is the flip method. And the flip method is how we present things. And what we hope to do in all of the things that we do is to present, be in the present moment with awareness, be completely here, which is so powerful. Be informative. We want to offer you something that you can take and do something with. Be lively and be fun. And I'm not sure why fun is a little disjointed there, but it's important. Get in there, fun. Stay here. So why do couples start off like this? Like they just can't get enough of each other. They are just so, can't stand the thought of being apart. They think the other person is perfect. Everything is so wonderful. It's just like magic. And end up like this. That doesn't look like nearly as much fun, does it? And what are they thinking there? Put in your own captions. Looks like my story about this is he's watching football or something. And she's thinking, why didn't I run away with the circus like my original plan? To see your drama clearly is to be liberated from it. Ken Keyes. So this is something that is a part of our concept, is that we turn all of the concepts toward ourselves first and to see our part, which is also something we're going to recommend for couples. And so there's some research on relationships by Gottman. He had I think they called it the living room experiment. And he would invite couples to go there for 24 hours at a time. And he said it was just like a bed and breakfast. And they were just supposed to watch TV, watch movies, hang out together. Except they had 4 cameras, Holter monitors. They tested their urine samples for stress hormones. They took blood samples for immune responses. And someone was charting every facial response that they were making with each other. It's quite a bed and breakfast. Sounds like a great getaway. Whoops, we took a T out of Gottman there accidentally. I'm really good at seeing what's wrong, so sometimes I out myself for things that are mistakes. Predicting divorce with 90% accuracy was the result of this research. That's pretty exciting. It's only exciting if then we can see what not to do, right? Have the list of what not to do. But the 4 horsemen that they came up with were the most accurate at predicting divorce. So the 4 horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And they predict, if you have all of them, they predict early divorce 5.6 years after the wedding. And emotional withdrawal and lack of positive affect and conflict predict divorce within 16.2 years. So both of those factors, and the one probably leads to another, right? And so these are the 4 horsemen. Those are the actual horsemen right there running. I happened to go film them in the middle of Colorado. This white one is criticism. This one with the brown tail and nose beside him is contempt. This one is stonewalling. The big one here coming right toward us. And this one over here, almost a shadow, is defensiveness. Criticism. What's wrong with you? Have you ever had anyone ask you that question? And when they said, what's wrong with you? Were you inclined to say, oh, let me think. Seeing the things that are wrong, judgment about the other person, criticizing, having a negative view or lens. So we use this a lot in our trainings. What are the glasses you're wearing? How are you seeing the world through your experiences? Defensiveness. Whoops. I think I'm still sharing. Okay. Defensiveness. Righteous indignation or the innocent victim are both defensiveness. The innocent victim, Gottman describes as the whiner. Oh, I don't know why you always have to do this. And the antidote for that is accepting responsibility even for a small part of the problem. Contempt, calling names. The opposite is appreciation, which is a habit of the mind. And I was just at the IMDRIA conference, and Joan Borznia, I believe her name is, or Borzniak, was there from Santa Fe, and she talked about how appreciation and the intention daily of noticing things that are blessings or that you appreciate can begin to change the patterns of our mind. So the opposite is appreciation. Instead of scanning for criticism, scanning for what you can praise and appreciate. And then stonewalling. And they describe stonewalling as the opposite of this. So if I'm here, I'm usually having some facial movement. I'm engaged. There's like a movement toward. And stonewalling is more like, okay. So we're going to talk about the answer in a moment. And stonewalling usually has a partner, which is a bulldozer or a wrecking ball, we'll call it. So as Gottman said, instead of the 40-pound cannon, the wrecking ball pulls out the 60-pound cannon and keeps trying to knock it over, and the stone wall gets bigger. Yeah, so divorce after 16.2 years, predicting it with 90% accuracy, is emotional withdrawal, lack of positive affect during conflict discussions, and lack of shared humor or affection. And so conflict, what is the conflict? And what do we do about it? Sometimes as therapists, we think it's our job to help people resolve conflict. And actually, most conflict will not be resolved. It's almost like, have any of you been on any kind of social media lately? And people are arguing about politics. There is probably zero chance, not even a 1% chance that anyone is going to convince anyone of anything, right? There will always be conflicting views. And the same with couples. There are going to be conflicting views. The difference is, how do we deal with it? So one of the things that Gottman also says is that every relationship has perpetual problems. And it just depends on, you kind of are picking the problems you're going to have. And they're probably always going to be a part of the relationship, but how do you deal with it? And so we see these relationship patterns as attachment patterns, and the answer is what we call it, the overview. So we learn ways to manage in relationships from birth on. Our attachment patterns are the things we do to stay safe and stay attached. They're adaptations, not choices people are making. That's an important part. because often couples will come in and believe that the other person is doing these things on purpose. Why can't they just change? And so EMDR and attachment, why does it matter? Because whatever your client does, and especially with couples, you'll see it very quickly. The attachment patterns are just that. They're patterns, happen over and over again. And the attachment pattern is the plan or model of relationship the person is following, the blueprint by which they're designing their relationships. Because of this blueprint, you will eventually see the manifestation of design. And when you begin to see the manifestation of this, it's an opportunity. And this will surface in all phases of the process. So an example of this is when you have someone come in, and maybe they're not a couple, or maybe they are, and they attribute their poor relationships to poor choices. I'm just really bad at picking partners, or I just always pick crazy women, or I'm just always, people always fool me. They trick me, and they act like they're nice in the beginning, and then they end up being jerks. That's because so if we can help them to see their half of that blueprint, bring more awareness to that, what's their half of that pattern, we will have the most luck in helping them. So the attachment becomes our working model. And in our relationships, the things that we're looking for, what happens to these areas as a result of our early attachment patterns? Trust. Can others be trusted? Is the world a safe place? Value. Does the child, or do I have value or worth? And then personal power. Does the child have the ability to affect change? Can you make things happen? And so as children, we have these patterns in these three areas, and we learn certain ways of cutting off from ourselves or of managing these three areas. And so the answer, our concept, is based on what we had to do, what all of us did, to maximize safety and maximize connection with our caregivers. And if we had lots of siblings like I did, you may have different answers depending on different relationships. And so you may have had one way of connecting with one sibling, one way of connecting with one caregiver, and another way of connecting with another caregiver that worked. And so that's why our answer is never an answer. They are kind of a complex tapestry of things that we learned how to do to maximize safety and maximize connection. And so the things that play into that aren't just our experiences. Our experiences are one, and our experiences are on both ends. Actually, our experiences are on that bottom. The whole thing is about experience. As we're learning about epigenetics, we're learning that our experiences can actually change our the way that our genes are showing up. So, and it changes that for the future. So even the DNA experience has an effect on our DNA. But the window of tolerance over here on I guess it's everyone's left, is about our times when we had to dissociate in order to stay safe or stay connected. And over here on the other side is the boot camp. Like, what did your family value most? What did they really appreciate? What were the things that they valued, that they felt like were funny, or they felt like were important? Whatever that was, you had to learn how to fit in with that group, right? Our culture. And even our culture can be a part of all of this. So there are small ways that we have a boot camp, and then we have our larger boot camp of our town, and then our state, and then our country, and even in our world. So the way that we're looking at this, a really important part of this way of looking at things is that it's strength-based and it's truth-based. we're looking on what's really here right now. This is something that so many people miss, is what's here? What's here in this moment right now? And how can we let it be here so that we can really understand it and begin to make choices, have more awareness around it. So we're looking for what the client currently does best and what's over and underdeveloped, and how they're both an adaptation and how it was prior. Most of the time, those adaptations were prior to the relationship for a couple. And so by doing this, we are increasing safety and increasing compassion, safety and connection. And we have developed out of the answer something called character types. And the beauty of the character types is not to label, but to understand and to create a hypothesis. And so doing this with couples is really awesome because you can see how certain types fit together. With this, we're predicting the pitfalls and we're understanding what we need to bring back the balance. And then what is over and underdeveloped, that is also about the balance. And we do this by using experiments and using probes and getting information from the body. And the body just means all of us, not necessarily from the neck down. Your head is also a part of your body. And people forget that sometimes. And this is the character types chart. I sent this out to all of you, and this will also be a download available for the distance learning. And the important part of these is that under all of them is the authentic self. And so I was reading a book on core energetics. That was one of the, I got a lot of the books that Ron Kurtz, who's the founder of Hakomi, I looked in his references and I thought, I'm going to buy these books because I want to understand how he got this awesome model. So Hakomi was what Pat Ogden was a part of before she developed sensory motor psychotherapy. And it's just a beautiful, non-violent way of working. If you have a chance, I'd recommend that you go to YouTube and look up Ron Kurtz. And there are lots of things on YouTube of him demonstrating the principles of the Hakomi. And so they had some character types in the Hakomi model, but they were still a little bit like looking for what was wrong. And so we developed this character types chart so that you could begin to see what the therapist sees. So these types are kind of what you'll see with the client. So the invisible one at the top, they kind of go, they go down in terms of developmental milestones too. And so if someone has a lot of early trauma, they will have an ability to dissociate and to disappear and to get really small. And that's because they had lots of times when they felt like they were in danger or their life was in danger. The second one is the emotional one, and that's where they were safe as a baby, and then eventually the rug was ripped out from under them. And so and all of us have some of these. So if you look deep enough and if your awareness grows wide enough about yourself, you'll see how all of us have parts of all of these, and we're not one, we're not even two, we're all of them. And so the emotional one learns how to read another person and kind of merge with them. And so they are really good at noticing how the caregiver is feeling and then trying to manage how the caregiver is feeling so they can be okay. So they have it's okay to be safe as long as their environment is safe, and they're kind of always like, there's an illusion that they can manage another person. And then the nice, non-threatening one, they learn that having personal power or exerting personal power isn't safe. And so they learn how to be nice and how to kind of manage people by being nice. These are all kind of ways of managing yourself and others, really. And then the independent one learns that their needs aren't met. So the same with the nice, non-threatening one. Their needs were not met, but for them, it wasn't safe to ask for what they wanted or to stand up or have personal power. And so if this is a main thing that you're seeing in a relationship with a couple, somewhere someone learned it's not safe for me to set boundaries. It's not safe for me to be angry. They can feel a lot of sadness, and you can see that, but you'll rarely see anger or personal power from them. A lot of times you can note the way people hold their arms, whether how much personal power they feel they have. So I'll stand for this because it may be good for me to demonstrate the body types too. So starting with the invisible one, what you'll see with the invisible one is it may just be even very slight, but there's like this. And there's usually the arms are not very powerful there either. The emotional one will have that, but they'll also have a kind of a sad look on their face. The nice, non-threatening one, well, actually, the emotional one will more like have it's like an outward, you can almost feel their energy coming at you. The nice, non-threatening one is more like that. It's like a helplessness and a look up. The independent one is like, you're not going to feel too much from them, and it's just going to be, it's kind of the American way. So it's kind of a squareness here, and there's not a lot of reaching out though. So what they're not really good at is reaching out for help. The rock, they will have a lower center of gravity, generally, a thickness about them, and a little bit of a roll on their shoulders. But it's different than the invisible one. It probably comes out of the invisible one, but that roll is like, I can take it. I can keep taking it. I have to learn how to keep taking the pressure and hang on to myself somehow. And so it becomes tougher, harder and harder. And then the chameleon, they learn how to adapt. And so a lot of their energy is out, and they will have a lot of movement. It'll be movement to the side, but they're not really good at is, hi, my name is whatever. They're more like, hey, how you doing? It's kind of like that. And then the hero actually comes out often out of the invisible in a trauma response. If they had a lot of trauma and they learn, I have to be tough in order to be okay. And so they come up and they have a bigger body up here, and they will have their lower body will have very little, will be smaller. And then the doer, there's almost a motion. They're always in motion like this. They're always doing the next thing. They're always making another plan. They're always taking another step. And the life of the party will usually have a lot of energy up here. They have to everything has to be big for them to be seen. And under all of these are beliefs. And so we have this chart for you to work with. But remembering that under all of them is the organic. Oh, that's a good idea. Someone said, can you put yourself on full screen for that? Yeah, I can. So any questions about those types? And how about if I just run through them again so you can see them? I'm on the screen now, right? How about if I run through those body types again, just really quickly, and show them to you? So we have the invisible one. They learn to disappear. And the funny thing is, with the invisible one, as they disappear, what they want most is to be seen. But they keep themselves from being seen. The emotional one is like this. It's almost like they're really sensing you. It's almost like if you could see energy, you would see them sending out sensors. How are people feeling? How are you? Are you okay? Are you okay? Now I don't have my chart in front of me. The nice, non-threatening one, they have a helplessness look to them, and usually, can you help me? I can't do it. I can't do it. What's the next one? Now I'm freaking myself out. The independent one. The independent one actually, every time if someone has their needs not met, and they were once the helpless one, the nice, non-threatening one, because they learned how to be nice. Can I help you? Oh, I can do something for you. And that helps people. By being nice, they're helping keep that connection. So if they were lucky enough to be helpless and not have needs, and then not be abused because they tried to exert some power, tried to do it themselves, then they become the independent one. So the independent one, under that, every independent one is, I need help, but I don't know how to ask for it, and I don't know how to get it. And so I do it myself. And so I learned to do everything myself. I can fix the car, I can, whatever you need, whatever I need done, what I don't know how to do is to say, can you help me? I need help. Because they hate that part of themselves, like they're exile. Don't ever need help. And the rock is the next one. I'm just going to show myself so I can see. The rock is like this, and there's like a solidness. So it's like there's a way that the rock makes it so if you push them, they're not going to move very much. The rock comes out of people who have to become good at doing things they don't want to do. So the rock is really good at taking it, enduring until it stops. I can get through anything. The chameleon learns to adapt, and so they can move from side to side. They're not really good at moving forward or taking steps to, somebody just walked in that door, being direct and moving forward. The hero learns how not to be vulnerable, and so they were once, the invisible one had a lot of trauma, and they come up and out and get tough. So John Wayne, or somebody who walks in and they're just like kind of puffed up and angry. Maybe even one of our presidents of the United States maybe became the hero. The doer is always doing the next thing, and there's kind of with the doer, they're always ready to take off. And in life of the party, they might have a big hat. They learn, I have to be big. I have to have anyone notice me, I have to make it really big. I have to get lots of attention. So thank you for requesting that. I hope that was helpful. Okay. So any questions? We have 5 minutes until our break. Any questions about that? I can talk about how these look with couples, which is why you're here, right? Well, thank you. So as you look at that chart, if you have it in front of you, think about some of the couples that you're working with and how they might fit together. I'm going to pull up my chart too in my book here. How might these people find each other, right? So if you think about someone, some of the reasons that we see couples, one is because people are in an abusive situation, right? And how do they get in an abusive situation? And then they get into another one and another one and another one. Mostly the reason they do that is that, one, the person being the abuser isn't looking to be an abuser. They're not looking for a victim, really. They're looking for someone to help, usually. They're looking for someone to make them feel strong, to make them feel useful, to make them, feel like a good person, right? And the person who's being abused now, they didn't come into the relationship looking to be abused. They looked for someone to save them, someone who was strong, someone who could help them, finally help them get some help. They're probably the nice, needy one, right? The nice, non-threatening one. So as we think about these different types and how they fit together, they fit perfectly. So if someone is a hero also, they may find the perfect match in someone who is the invisible one. They're another person that's easy to see how they might need you to do something, right? Other things that people complain about when they come in to work, lack of connection, right? So part of what we do with our character type, they're all to stay out of vulnerability. And as we can become more aware of how our answers are here, we can have more choices around vulnerability and what we can choose to do it in a different way with awareness. That's the beauty of it too. So any other questions about that before we take our break? And then we'll move on to more about working with couples. One other way to look at it is there's lots of ways to look at the answer, because we're talking about an imbalance and we're talking about something that's overdeveloped and something that's underdeveloped. And so Chinese medicine has a great way of looking at all of the elements, and actually most ancient healing ways have a way of looking at an imbalance. And so if you think about earth, wind, fire, water. If you just think about those 4 elements and what's most, how those are out of balance with the person, that can fit right in with this too. Someday I'm going to make a chart that includes those. So for right now though, how about if we take a 10-minute break and come back at 2 o'clock. And if you have questions, put them in and I'll answer them when we get back. And if not, we'll continue with learning. All right, thank you. All right, I'm recording and share my screen. Share. Is that what I want to share? There it is, okay. Share my screen. All right. From current slide. So that's the character types. And then we have another way of working with the answer. So if you think about, so the first thing that we're doing actually when we're working with couples is beginning to understand the pattern. And so we want to understand the pattern together, and we want to understand the pattern individually. So each person's attachment pattern basically, and then how do their patterns work together? And they work together. It's almost always the case that the thing that attracted them to each other is also the thing they hate about each other. So if a person, so maybe that person who was in a relationship that was very, first married the hero, and now they marry someone who is the nice, non-threatening one the next time, right? The boomerang effect. And so the thing they liked about them is they're safe, They're so nice. They, think about what other people want. They're always looking for what they can do to help. And what are they complaining about? They'll complain, I can't, it's like I can't get him to set boundaries with anyone. He's always doing things for his friends. He can't say no. It's like there's nothing there. He can't, I might get upset with something. He'll never get angry. And so the reason we're looking for the answer with each one, the reason we want to work with it very carefully is that we're working directly with the defense. And so these patterns that each person individually created because of to maximize connection and safety is also ways that they had to adapt, and they are the defense. It's what they do to stay safe. It's what they do to stay connected. It's their automatic response. That's their strength, but it's also the defense. And it keeps them from getting the thing they want the most, and it keeps them miserable in their relationships, basically. But the 5 C's are important to use because as we're working with the defense, if we just try to make it go away, it's going to get bigger, basically. And I love how Ron Kurtz puts it. I don't know if Ron put it this way, but I was reading a Hakomi book, and they talk about how we want to first expand what is here. Whatever's here, we want to expand it. We want to understand it. We kind of want to deepen into it before we try to even offer that there's another way. Too often, I would say this is the number one thing that therapists do wrong. I do lots of consultation. I do lots of training. And whenever the questions, even though it's, it's so difficult to do for whatever reason, it's so difficult to welcome what's here that we skip right to trying to make it go away. And it's the surest way for you to work too hard and to have ineffective therapy. So the 5 C's are to catch it. And when catching it, it's silent. It's like, oh, I'm seeing them doing this thing. And I become curious about it. That's the second thing. So I'm seeing something happening, and then I become curious. And curiosity, all by itself, is probably the most important skill you can develop. So if you can develop curiosity as a therapist, you're going to naturally not work too hard. You're going to naturally not try to make something happen, which creates if you're pushing to try to make something happen, there has to be a pushback. So that curiosity, and it's also silent. You think, I see this thing happening, and I'm curious about it. And then in those two, and in the next one, you begin to create a hypothesis. And the hypothesis sounds like this. Oh, I wonder where they learned how to do that. Even if the thing they're doing is so super annoying, keeping them miserable, I don't want to say, oh, you're doing this thing that's so super annoying. It's probably keeping you miserable, right? Do the whole Dr. Phil thing. It doesn't really work. So how's that working for you? Doesn't work. So we want to do a more curious thing than that. Like, oh, I see this. I create this hypothesis, and I see them like as a 5-year-old. That's the best way to put it. I think, why would a 5-year-old develop this? And can I imagine this person as a 5-year-old doing this? If I can do that, and then I start with that curiosity, getting more information from them just around this. So tell me more. I want to hear more. It's so interesting how you're really good at this. So this is all in my head first as I'm listening. And if I can get to that celebrate or collaborate, the client becomes adorable. And so we're not saying you're adorable. We're not crossing boundaries. Or for some people, that would be so, because most people have a hard time with having, allowing nurturing. And so That could be for some clients, they would never come back. So I'm not saying say that to them, but I'm saying if it's a good sign that you know you're on the right path, you have the right hypothesis. If the thing the client does, which is also their symptom, which is also the thing they're trying to get away from, they're trying to stop doing, becomes adorable. Like, oh. So I've recently been super adorable. I was so adorable last night with my son. We had a little disagreement about some things that included both of us. And both of our answers came up. And so we were both like trying to tell the other person, how we were feeling, but nobody was listening to the other person. So if I could see myself first, oh, I see this 5-year-old nobody's listening to, and she's just getting angry and is maybe stomping off. Or for my son, he's actually the one that didn't really stomp off, but if he was, it could have been a stomp off. He said goodbye very nicely, but if I could see that as a 5-year-old, I can start appreciating it. Oh, yeah, what is it how did they learn how to do that? Then we appreciate it. And then after you get there, after you can really appreciate it and the client becomes adorable, then you can begin to contact this is the first time you mention it. So along the way, you're doing other contact, which we're going to talk about more, because making contact with what you're seeing in a way that's non-threatening, non-violent, and curious is also a way to deepen into mindfulness. It's also a way for the client to have more awareness of what's happening. So in these other steps, you're doing contacting, but you're kind of just contacting what you see or what you hear or the theme. And so I might be contacting, oh, yeah, a lot of anger, huh? Yeah, a lot of thoughts. Yeah. So contacting what you're hearing and seeing, but then when you contact what they do best, which is the answer, that's after they're cute. They become adorable. And then they might say, wow, you're really good at setting boundaries. So I might say that to me. Wow, you're really good at setting really firm, clear boundaries with people. It's another way to say, wow, you can really shut people out, can't you? But we aren't going to say that, right? That's going to activate the defense. But if you say you're really good at stating what you want and setting really firm, clear boundaries, that's putting it in the positive. And then you can connect it to the past. So how did you learn to get so good at that? Where did you learn to do that so well? And so this could take a while, and this is what we're doing throughout the whole process as we see something else come. Whenever there's a block, the answer is here every single time. All right. So to go along with the types, we have an answer for couples. And so we have 2 different answers that you can use. And I would like to invite all of you to fill this out for yourself, for you and your relationship. And so I have worked with couples that were, one couple that I worked with was actually a stepfather and stepdaughter. And so couples don't always have to be romantic relationships. Most of the time we think about that, and we're talking mostly about that today. But whenever we're working with 2 people, basically, who come into our office and they want to improve their relationship, we're working with a couple. So what is your favorite thing to do when you have a free day? Asking each of them to fill these out separately. What do you most dread? What is your favorite memory from early in your relationship? What did you most like about your partner when you first met? What are you most frustrated by in life right now? What makes you happy? What does your partner do that drives you crazy? What is easy for you to do? What do you do if someone tells you no? How do you get your way? What is your favorite childhood memory? What do you most admire about your caregivers? What was frustrating about your caregivers? What is difficult for you to do? What was your favorite childhood activity? When you're upset, how can people tell? That's the same as I do use that one with kids too, with everyone. It's a good open-ended question. When you need to recharge, what helps? If there is an emergency, what are you likely to do? What makes you feel proud? How do you handle extreme pressure? What are you really good at doing? Does lots of connection make you feel better or worse? What is your first instinct when something bad happens? So those can give you some answers about patterns and relationships. You're looking for those patterns. So you're looking for, and some other things that you can add into those questions. You already heard me say some of those. How is that helpful now? How did you learn to do that so well? What was it an answer to? Is there ever a time it gets in the way now? Is the answer an issue in your relationship? How was that partner's answer once appealing? And how is it now frustrating? So these can either be questions that you ask if you're at a point to ask, but these are deeper questions that may activate the defense. So you don't want to ask these until you're at a point where you feel like the awareness is there, the appreciation is there, because we really have to appreciate the answer, truly appreciate it, not just say we do to make it so we aren't trying to make it go away. Is that a turn? Oh my. Here? All right. And what we're looking for is to find the pattern. What do they do? How does it feel familiar? How is it helpful? Does it get in the way? How is it helpful in childhood? Did it get in the way in childhood, and how did it help? How does it keep them from getting what they want the most? And so the answers will always point to the missing experience. So if someone is really good at setting boundaries, they're not really good at feeling safe. And so if someone is really good at doing things they don't want to do, they're not really good at knowing what they want to do or being able to go after what they want to do. So, and sometimes they don't even know how to begin to dream. So we're kind of keeping that as a concept as we're asking these questions and looking at this with couples and relationships. Another benefit of this is we increase compassion with a couple. So what we do, moving myself here. What we do with the answer information is we're going to say something like, oh, so it sounds like you're really good at staying safe by disappearing. And when you do that, your partner blank. So it's good. In phase one, we're kind of having a conceptualization of the pattern and the cycle. So if any of you have taken Sue Johnson's course in emotion-focused therapy, the first process of that therapy is coming up with a cycle. What happens? What do you do? What does your partner do? What does that create? And how does this cycle keep perpetuating? So, and then in phase two, for EMDR, phase one is beginning for history taking. And for history taking in our model, we're always looking at the history of their current strengths, the history of their current resources, and we do that more than a history or first before we want a history of anything traumatic. Because why would we want to know? Why do we want to know the resources first? Because they might need them before they talk about the trauma. They need safety. We need safety before we can have connection. And so the same with our couples, the same with therapy. So creating a safe container, they call it in sensory motor, is beginning to ask those questions and appreciate those parts of them that most people try to make go away, even them. And that helps to begin building safety. And then in phase 2, we begin looking at what is underdeveloped. So since you're really good at disappearing, what are we going to do if that happens when we start processing? If you're going to be doing that with them. So that's a clinical choice. So EMDR is a whole approach to therapy. In that approach to therapy, we're looking not just at doing this, but we're looking at how are we seeing the manifestation of past experiences right here and right now. That's EMDR. If you're doing that, it's like the leaves of the tree are showing you the root of the tree. And so certain things happen and they build these experiences, and then we're seeing them blossom as symptoms. So as we look at what they do best and appreciate it, then we're going to begin to build first by welcoming that here and expanding that in the room, build the resources. So part of it is predicting the worst, predicting the dangerous and the annoying is what I like to say. So the dangerous things are you suicidal? Are you going to hurt somebody else? Do you have, fits of rage? Do you have uncontrolled addictions that are life-threatening? Do you have blackouts? Do you have, dissociative disorders? We want to know those things. And the reason we want to know is they're here for a reason, number one. And those are the things that could be dangerous. And so if they are, then we make a plan first before we even begin asking about what happened early. Some people have no access to what happened early. So what do we need to put in place before we start processing? Maybe it's having a couple, it may be having them separate before we start processing. It may be having them have rules. It may be creating boundaries of separate parts of the house, depending on what you find. So it may be very practical things, or it may be practicing not reacting. It may be practicing being supportive. It may be practicing reaching out, the act of reaching out. Making a plan and practicing what is needed. Well, and we also have the regular answer, and I would recommend that you do this with each of them too, as well as yourself. First yourself, understanding your own answer, and then always being curious about how your answer is here is the most powerful thing you can do to improve yourself as a therapist. Because your answer, every time someone brings a case to me, I can see how their answer is playing a part of it, or how that case has blinded them because of some way that it's very close to a sore spot for them. So understanding your own answer is going to be important. So doing this for yourself. So basically, our answers are an answer to staying away from the truth. And couples are really good, especially if they're in trouble, of staying away from the truth. And usually by the time they get to our office, they have managed to kind of blame each other for that, but each of them, there's a way that they're not being with the truth of the current situation or expressing their own truth of how they're feeling or what they want. So our answers were all developed to stay away from the truth being, I'm not accepted if I don't fit in, basically, or if I don't do something, I'm not okay as I am, and it's not safe to be connected. It's not safe to be vulnerable. So I have to do all these things to make myself safe, to keep myself connected so I can be safe. And so we get angry, we minimize, we lie, we merge, we disappear, we get busy, we have addictions, we laugh, we submit and be nice, and whatever else, whatever your clients tell you, all those can be put into here. And they're all just ways of staying away from the truth. And so part of our job as therapists is to look at the truth. One of the first truths I like to look at with couples is, what's the current agreement? And so I start to listen for the current agreement. And it's like what their answers are both agreeing to. And so for some people, the current agreement is, you act like you're happy and don't tell anybody anything different. And, or sometimes the current agreement is, you are in charge of everything and I work. I am in charge of, my working and golfing. Or the current agreement is, I get to have my feelings, but you don't. And we want to know what the agreement is on both sides. How do they see the current agreement? Our answers were very helpful to keep us attached, become our strength, our go-to way of managing. And this is an important part. They're now patterns that feel like reality. They feel like the only option for reality. And they keep us from getting the things we want most. They keep us from being free. They hold us back from being a shining star. And they create what we don't want. They're the adaptation, but now they're the problem, right? They're the imbalance. And so we're looking for that. And they manifest in our physical body every single time. So if you get a chance, have someone secretly video you walking across your living room. What's your pace like? Do you walk fast? Do you shuffle your feet? Do you have your head down? Is there a way that you're behind yourself walking? Is there a way that you're ahead of yourself walking? Is there a way that you walk side to side? Lots of movement. Whatever it is, noticing, how might that have developed? So the somatic part of this is our bodies will become what they do over and over again. So what are you doing over and over again that is creating the current shape of your body? And so as we look at all of those things, we find the pattern. We're looking for the pattern. What do they do? How does it feel familiar? How is that helpful? Does it get in the way? How was it helpful in childhood? Did it get in the way of childhood? How does it keep them from getting what they want the most? That's going to be an important one. Finding that pattern and finding that cycle and seeing how these developed and how does this cycle feel familiar? And how is this keeping you from getting what you want the most? And we're finding the balance. Carl Rogers. Who doesn't love Carl Rogers? The curious paradox is that when I can accept myself just as I am, then I can change. So as we think about our clients becoming adorable, how does I'm adorable become I want to be desired or I am desired in relationships? How can we help people to find each other adorable again? So we have the answer, what they did to stay safe or connect and attached to caregivers. That becomes the strength, the resource, and block to healing, all three. And what we want to do with that is use a concept called nonviolence. We cannot heal the client or resource the client. We can only set the conditions for the opportunity to occur. And our words matter. Language is so powerful. So if I say to you, and I can say it in the sweetest voice, close your eyes, take a deep breath, sit up straight in your chair. Notice how you're feeling as you hear those words. What happened in your body as I said those things? Close your eyes, take a deep breath, sit up straight in your chair. And now what happens as I say, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes. And if it feels right for you, just begin noticing your breath, just as it is. And I'd like to invite you to notice the current state of your spine. And as you notice that current state, does it feel straight? Is there a little curve to it? Are you going off to one side? And as you stay with that noticing, is there any way you feel like an urge to adjust? And if so, just allowing that to happen. Those two examples demonstrate what we call nonviolence. Does anyone have a different experience with those two things? I'm going to stop the share for a moment. Did anyone have anything? First of all, is anyone listening? And if so, did anyone have a different experience with those two things? Or notice anything? And it's okay, whatever it is. Maybe you noticed the second one was super annoying and you'd rather have me telling you what to do. And you can respond two ways, either to me only, to just all panelists, or to all panelists and attendees. So everyone can see it, or just me. I'm going to sit here mindfully waiting to see if someone would like to answer my question. Did anyone notice anything different between those two things? How about you out there in distance learning land? Did you notice anything different? Feel free to write it down. Okay. I was okay being told to do, but the second was more relaxing. Loving this. First triggered F you, and second warmed me. We know you're a character type. Good. Yeah, so for some people, being told what to do is comforting. Some people want you to tell them what to do, right? They want to be told what to do so they know what to do, right? And for other people, it's just like, what you talking about, Willis? Who do you think you're talking to? Like some people out there. Some of my dear friends out there. Yeah, so noticing that. And it's a great example of how our words matter. And not just our words, but also the way we say our words. And that's what I want you to notice. Sometimes another thing that's way overdeveloped for therapists that I'm finding is that they listen just to the words. They're so tuned into the content of what people are saying, and they're missing out on a lot of information. I have we did a recent demo, and someone was I was watching it happen. So I was watching someone else doing EMDR. And as the person was talking about wanting to reach out to her mother and not being able to, and that was what she was processing, this was happening. So this one hand was like this, and the other hand was doing this. This one was like frozen like this. So noticing more than the content of what's being said and the way it's being said are all important parts. And language is not just with our words, right? Language is also with our body language. Okay. So then mindfulness. So the nonviolence is important, inviting. The important part of nonviolence too is recognizing clear boundaries. Like, we can't make somebody do anything, or we can't heal people. I know that's like an extreme part, but we say things like, I can't think of one now, but like resourcing people, or making them safe, or making them angry even, or making them happy. So if you find yourself feeling like taking responsibility, maybe for the good sessions, then you might also feel responsibility for the sessions where people don't heal, right? So neither of them are true. We're setting the conditions, and people get to choose if they take those steps or not. It doesn't mean we're bad therapists if somebody chooses to walk on that path or not. Mindfulness, that's been around since the beginning of time. And now we have research to show the benefits of mindfulness. And it's so awesome. It's so awesome to have research, really, the same with the EMDR. Now we have the research to put underneath what we've always known. Mindfulness, awareness of this present moment, is awakening. That's enlightenment. It's how we stay out of this present moment, or the extras that we add in. So the answer is basically the extra. What's the extra you're adding in here? That extra story, that extra whatever we're seeing, that keeps us from being right here. And so stabilizing mindfulness is one of the most important skills that we can have with working with anyone. Working with couples, it can be super, super powerful. I was working with a couple they were very volatile, both of them. And so they both had a trauma history, and they would get activated, and then they would be just, and they would just be yelling at each other and standing up and, all kinds of disruptive behaviors. And so you sometimes have to be the pace. Your curiosity might need to help set the pace. And so with mindfulness, what we're doing is slowing down so we can study what's going on. So we can invite the mindfulness, we invite the slowing down, We invite looking and what happens for you as this is happening. And so mindfulness helps us study what's going on, and studying is immensely more important than solving. We find out what's really going on. We help the client to have a deeper understanding of themselves. Things kind of open up with just a little bit of an invitation to mindfulness. First, I want to let you know what's not important for therapists. And this is kind of the bad news, because some of you are here for one of these reasons, knowing a lot. So I was really happy to hear this. I probably do know a lot, but that's never been one of my things I was really proud of. And it was never one of my main ways of being in the world, having lots of information. I read a lot, I do know a lot, but knowing a lot doesn't really help. Fixing things. Not only does this not help, it makes things worse mostly. And it makes you work too hard. And then you have your spleen gets all depleted and you're, all messed up. Having answers. But yet we want to, right? Yet they're asking for them. And what do? They're here to get answers. They want something from me. I have to give them something. So all of you are kind of here for that, right? I guess nobody's asking. People aren't asking too many questions, but maybe you just think I'm giving you all the answers. Maybe that's it. But sometimes people think they're paying me. I'm here to tell them, give them something. And by the time they walk out of the door, they're going to have something. I'm giving them the answers. Prescribing what they should do. You should go home, sit on the couch, face each other, and mirror what the other person is saying for a half an hour a day. Right, that can be something that maybe people could use and could be a useful thing to do. Stop working so hard. What's more important as a therapist? Mindfulness. Now we're seeing with the neurobiology research that actually the mirror neurons that are in the room and the neurobiology that happens when you can be mindfully present can change everything. It can change the feeling. It can change the energy in the room. It can slow things down. Presence. Being here. Can you feel my presence here? I'm feeling your presence out there. Trusting that what we're experiencing as we sense someone's presence or not is true, because it is the truth. It's the truth of our experience right now. So how present are you right here? Where is your attention? Where is the energy? Where is the presence? And as I'm here, really experiencing my own presence, can you feel that? What happens for you? And that's the relational part of presence. Self-awareness. So I have a few things that I believe are true, and I really believe this is true. That you cannot take your clients any further than you are. And there will be small ways that you stop them. That you stop them from going further than you are, because you can't handle it. And as you develop your own self-awareness, you'll see ways that your best things that you had to offer are really overdeveloped, and maybe there are some other things that you could develop to help you not have to work so hard. or work harder if working not so hard is your answer. Nonviolence, we've beaten that one like a dead horse. That's not a very nice picture. Healthy boundaries. So this is super important. Healthy boundaries for you. I was, in my practice, busy, all my days were really full, and my son who lives in town would invite me to lunch, and I said, oh, I scheduled a client, somebody wanted to get in. And he said, why do you do that? And I thought, good question. Because they had to get in. Well, who's in charge of your schedule? Me? Yeah, I'm going to have to talk with my boss. So having healthy boundaries, forgetting about yourself or going beyond your own boundaries for your clients isn't good. If I could go back in time, I would never, when my kids were little, I would have worked until 3 o'clock and then got home before they got home from school. I worked an extra hour after they were home from school, or half an hour. And I wish I wouldn't have. So always, thinking about what is the life you want to live, knowing that, and then how can I do that? You don't have to work nights. You don't have to work weekends unless you really want to. Some people like it. Maybe some people like working nights too. The same with, sometimes people ask about eye movements or if it hurts. If something is hurting you as a therapist while you're doing therapy, it's not good for your clients. Whatever it is. If you're going beyond yourself and forgetting about yourself, you have to be a healthy source to be a good therapist. Compassion with the boundaries. Those two go together. Having compassion, but then letting it go. When you walk out, letting it go, letting it be. Allowing people, realizing that people have the right to remain in pain. And then respect. Doing that in a way that we respect their right. It's like a right to struggle. We're all we all have different experiences. We're all here for maybe a very similar reason, but we all have different issues we're wrestling with. And so respecting that that's okay. So I just heard this, and I really liked it, that a method is a group of techniques and principles. If you have a bunch of techniques and that you're using and principles that you're working with, then you have a method. And so our method is the SAFE method, which is the somatic and attachment focused EMDR method. And we have techniques within that method. Techniques to stabilize mindfulness, contacting what's here in the present moment, noticing more than the story, using experiments, and welcoming and understanding the answer. So in phases 1 and 2, the first history we're getting is the history of the answer, and safety is first. So the thing about safety in the relationship and in the therapeutic relationship is if you don't have that, nothing else can happen. So that has to be the first thing that we assess, and what can be done to create safety. What needs to be put in place first so that safety can be here? Emotional safety, physical safety. What needs to be here? And in the sensory motor model, they call that creating the container, the safe container. And that's not the container that we use like a container exercise. It's more like this space that we're creating the therapeutic relationship is our container. And so safety in the therapy relationship. And so for couples, it might be meeting with them separately first or getting information from them separately somehow, if ethically you don't meet with them separately. Understanding what it's like to be each person. And then creating the resources together if needed, and together and apart as needed. and then creating the treatment plan. What are we going to do? How are we going to, what's the map we're going to take for this? Yeah, so it's almost time for another break. So why don't I stop sharing? We'll come back to that next slide. Yeah. Any questions so far? Or does anyone have a case that they're willing to present in the next hour? And I would love it if the case can be this case of client, a couple that you're working with that really activates you, you're just really feeling like you see the name of this couple on your schedule and you're like, no, please cancel. So if any of you have someone like that, I would really appreciate it if you would come on and present that case in the next hour so we could use that as a way to present this model. If you don't, I'll give a demonstration, but I'd much rather not a demonstration. I'm going to grab the neighbors and bring them over. They sit down. They didn't have any questions, so I needed a demonstration. So sit down and tell me about your problems. So unless you want me to grab the neighbors when we get back, I'd like one of you to have a case that you would like to present. All right, so why don't we come back in 10 minutes? Everybody go get a cup of tea or some, if you're lucky enough to have put some chia seeds in hot water with lemon, you can have that over the break. I'll see you in 10 minutes.
So I really like this. And just was trained part 1 through 3 with the Parnell Institute.
Oh, nice. Great. Well, welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, so tell me about your case.
Okay. So I have been seeing this couple for a couple of years. They come in fits and starts, but really consistently for the last year because she has a history of trauma, and and they both had pretty high profile positions in the greater Boston area. And they've been together. She came into the marriage. He's a minister, and she came into the marriage with 2 young children, and they've been together about 15 years now. 13.
For answers to come out, all those things. High profile career, a minister, young children coming in with a stepfather, right?
Right, who has no children of his own and no previous marriage.
Okay. Good.
And she had childhood, kind of unavailable parents, and was several times attempted to be assaulted by her brother, and who is actually a stepbrother who was brought in as part of the Cambodian boat lift. So his parents have this, so she grew up in a house where there was like altruism, but the person that they brought in actually tried to assault her over the years. Okay. And so she married, the way that I think about this case is she married this man who has a lot of altruism. He's a minister. And he's a minister's kid as well.
Okay. Yeah. So as you're thinking, as you heard about the answer and the way that they adapted to stay safe or stay connected, what do you see with them? What do they do best? What are their biggest strengths that they do?
The biggest strengths that they do is he tries to fix and tries to do and pacify. So he's a little bit of that chameleon, as I look at that strategies. He's got some of that, it's not a manipulative thing. He kind of is between the rock, the chameleon, and the hero and the doer. He has all aspects of that. But the one that I think really came forward earlier on in their relationship with me, in their therapy with me, was the rock. And now I feel like he's gotten much more to a place of the nice, non-threatening one.
Okay. So, and so how about for her?
So she has been the emotional one. She's also been the doer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she has a lot of amping, right? So she's got a lot of outward energy. So I feel she talks about being the invisible one, but her presentation is much more the emotional one.
Okay. So you can really feel her presence, like there's almost a sense of panic of emotional connection.
Absolutely. And like when she talks about their intimacy, it's almost like she's attacking him for not being enough. And then he responds by trying to engage, and then he pulls way back, which she sees as abandonment.
Yeah, so good. You're seeing a real pattern, like a cycle for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to write it up here.
Okay.
So here, I'll put out here the rock, mostly the rock. They're both the doer, it sounds like.
Yes.
And then the rock and the emotional one.
Yep.
So in her emotional is almost like pressure. He probably experiences that as pressure.
Yes.
So her emotional reaching out like in a panic.
Yes.
And it's like a pressure for him to be a certain way. And then his response is to try to be whatever she wants.
Yes.
And then feel like a failure. And then give up, like go away.
Yeah, he withdraws. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when he withdraws, she probably amps up some more.
Yes, she'll reach forward. She'll get more amped, and then she'll really throw a lot of really big statements.
Yeah.
Which are incredibly hurtful to him and shutting him down, but she's trying to get him to engage.
Yeah. So if we could see that see them both as little kids, and we imagine him in his home with his dad as a minister and this family. I'm kind of going to overgeneralize that type of family, but the family where there's a right and a wrong, you just do what you're told. It's not because you want to do it, but you do it because it's the right thing. And in that case, it's like there's even a bigger pressure because you're the son of the minister and we're the face of the church and you have to be good. You have to do, the right thing. That may never have been said, but it may have just been the water he was swimming in.
Yes.
And then my guess is anytime he tried to be anything else, like have a mind of his own or do what he wanted to do, that it was punished. It wasn't just discouraged, but he was probably told he was selfish. Don't be selfish. We have to think about other people. That's not.
I think that was his fear. I don't think he actually really ever challenged. I think he was really, the good kid, know, but I think really what happened was more unavailable. So there was no ability to process things. He learned that conflict just wasn't processed. You just behaved yourself and then you didn't have to deal with it,
Yeah. And that kept him attached. As long as he was behaving himself and being a good kid, he probably got praised for that.
Yes.
Maybe it was to other people, like, he's such a good boy. We don't have to worry about him. He gets such good grades. He's doing so well. Yeah. And so the attraction was likely, here's somebody who's really here.
Right.
Wow, she's really here. I can really feel her here.
Yes. Yes. That's great. Yep.
Yeah, and so he was probably like really attracted to that, her bigness, like, wow, it's like she really cares about me, she really loves me, I can feel her, and here she is.
Mm-hmm.
And her attraction, well, probably was if she didn't have anyone protecting her.
Right. And poor boundary.
Yeah, her parents were all about helping the world, saving the world instead of her.
Mm-hmm.
And so she probably felt like this is a nice guy who's not going to hurt me. And he's probably really good at seeing her because the rock is really good at seeing what other people want
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then figuring out how they can do that. So how can I give her what she wants so that I can have connection with her? And so that was probably like crack cocaine for her. She was, somebody cares about what I want and he's going to protect me and he's nice and he cares about me. So both of them had this really probably strong attraction to each other because of their answers.
Yep.
And then what happens is this, that once our answers become not just positives, then they get in the way of what we want. So at first it's like, oh, they're everything I've always wanted. They're everything I never had. And now they become the thing that they like the most about them is the thing that is driving them crazy now. And so for him, it's like, you can't please her. She can't, I can't be what she wants.
Yep.
And he tries because he's trying to be what she wants. And she probably wants him to be who he is, but she can't get to him because she probably, if a rock is here, I'll be the rock. He probably has this, a little bit of this. If you see the sideways.
Yeah.
And she probably has like this, like intense facial features. And she has this happening. And so as that's happening, as the rock experiences pressure, they become more of the rock. That's all they know how to do. And so as she tries to, but you can't feel the rock. So the part of the rock's purpose is to protect their life energy almost. Like he probably doesn't move very fast. He probably doesn't, he's not very spontaneous. He can take a lot before he blows or, before he says, that's enough or I can't do this.
Yep.
And then he may collapse on himself at that point, even blaming himself. So if you have a rock, and they have the perfect combination of the rock and the emotional one, and this is happening, if you can point out this cycle, first of all, and how first of all, maybe it worked when they were, I would want to know that. I would want to know, what did you love? What did you love about her? What are your best memories? What did you love? And then now, how is this happening? And then some things that you can, we're looking for, usually the thing that they're doing is also keeping them from getting what they want the most.
Okay.
So her pursuing and kind of pounding harder, trying to get him to be here or to be what she wants, creates more of the rock. And so if we can find the longing under that, and so if we can imagine her as a little girl and what she always needed, we're looking at the missing experience. So likely what she always needed was for someone to say, you matter.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yep.
matter. How you feel matters. And what's going on for you matters. So she must have had to, at some point, manage other people to keep herself okay. So maybe when he came into the home, he was, I don't know if he came in after she was born. So that's a typical, if he did, that would be the typical rug ripped out from under you.
Yes. She was 12 when he came into the house.
Okay, yeah. So she had a pretty safe environment, and then she lost her safety.
Yes. It was
Yeah.
safe. It wasn't nutritive, but it was safe.
Yeah.
So
Right.
she had, I mean, I think her basic needs were met, things like that, but I don't think it was particularly safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she was already kind of primed for being on her own and taking care of herself, or figuring out how other people are feeling so she could be okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep.
And then he came in and created the not safe.
Mm-hmm.
So not only am I not getting nurturing here, like my needs don't matter, and I have to kind of manage other people in order to be okay and how they're feeling. But now we have somebody that's, literally coming in, and nobody's protecting me.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I manage that? So as we can see those things, as you can see them, and as you can see him, her doing that, she starts to become adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can see that little girl who had to really, watch other people's reactions, emotional states, and try to manage those to get something from them.
Yeah, and I could see where she can wear you out in a session as a therapist, because it's all this forward movement and it goes from him to me, right? So there's a part where if she's feeling frustrated, or which couples therapy is frustrating at times, she'll sort of reach to me with that same like forward movement and the big eyes, like I should be imploring me to help her, just like that, a little bit more. And it can feel hard. I mean, I hold my seat, but I think I like the idea of keeping her adorable, because at times it can feel not that.
So what would you say with this couple, when you're in a session with them, what's your main answer?
What's my main answer?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good question.
What is it that you do?
I think that I've been really good at putting out fires with them.
Okay.
Looking at situations as they come in, if there's been a blowout or a problem, I think I've done a good job of helping them, get reflective, get mindful. I can keep them mindful most of the time in the session. But I do think that I'm concentrating on the trees and losing the forest a little bit, if that makes sense. As I'm managing these fires that pop up, I feel like there's an overarching piece that I'm not integrating enough for them.
So you're doing a lot of work, it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say so. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so how about right now in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
as you bring up that case, as you imagine that them in your office, imagine the next time they're coming in, what happens for you right now?
Well, I get a little tightness across my chest,
Mm.
and I get a worry that comes up that they're not they're not going to get better. They're not going to find a place of peace with each other.
Yeah. So anxiety, it sounds like, and this sense of needing to do something,
Mhm.
and this tightness.
Yep.
Yeah. So as you notice that almost like that over responsibility
Mhm.
and this anxiety as it relates to them, what else do you notice? What else happens for you?
There's a sense of feeling stuck,
Mm.
like a like a kind of like spinning my wheels feeling.
Mm. Yeah.
And the emotion that comes up is really around, I'm trying hard to keep the compassion forward, but the emotion that comes up is like, um, there's almost like a feeling like a sad frustration, like
Mhm.
a really kind of like a resignation, maybe.
Yeah. So like a sense of wanting to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like working really hard and then this sadness and kind of giving up.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you notice that for yourself, does that feel like a familiar pattern?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an old pattern, an old story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great awareness. So that's really probably the most important part of this
Hmm.
is recognizing how your you kind of are getting pulled in because of your patterns
Hmm.
or old, experiences, really.
Yep.
How that plays a role here, how it kind of keeps you, because there's also a belief in that you should do something.
Yes.
So it's my responsibility to make something happen here. And everybody's kind of in agreement on that, it sounds like.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
she's going, now, what are you going to do?
That's
And,
right.
and
Yep.
he's just like, oh, what, what can I do?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so everyone is kind of helpless. And then you come out as the firefighter, literally, not literally, but
Yep.
helping them put out their fires as they come in. And so that's really great awareness, because if we can see like that dance that's happening, I used to see that as I was working with a client, a couple, I would kind of see this up here happening,
Hmm.
like this thing that was going on in the room. And it's kind of above the surface, like we're all in agreement here, but can we view the pattern that we're all participating in? And as we see our part and bring awareness to that, how am I giving that? That's that extra thing that I was talking about. Like, what's the extra here?
Hmm.
And so it sounds like for you, the extra is this extra, and it's just a tiny, slight bit of responsibility, it sounds
Hmm.
like this extra responsibility for this, to either rescue him or get her to quit doing whatever she's doing.
Yep.
Please. And his is like, he's just this nice guy who's kind of getting beaten up by this, emotionally, by her.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that extra part that you're bringing in based on your early experiences can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so as you're looking for them, what you'd be doing for yourself first is, we would be looking at what would you need to just let the chips fall where they may there, to kind of name the truth. And that's usually that's what I found is what's under all of our answers is just this way that we're trying to manage the truth.
Yep.
And so and naming it can be so powerful because we just kind of get caught up in it. It's like the water we swim in.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your water that you swim in is the automatically taking just a little bit extra responsibility to make something happen, there's that pressure that, okay, how can I help them? What can I do? Then that will always also get in the way.
Yep. Yeah.
So as you imagine that, what would you need to know that it's okay to let the chips fall where they may?
I think the biggest thing that I would need to know is that I presented them or I helped them get some good tools, and then that I made it understandable and accessible for them. Whatever tools that that I feel like they need, I've made them. I've interpreted them in a way that they can take them in. That they can hear and see what they choose to do with it. I feel like I'm okay with that part of it, but their window of tolerance changes around so much that sometimes I feel like I've thrown things at them that haven't really pierced through. So I think for me, what I would need is to know that I presented them with something that they could understand, and in a way that they could understand and use it.
Okay. So it sounds like what you might need to know is that what you've done is good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you notice that hear me say, what you've done is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
What do you notice?
The bind, the part of me that wants to hear that, and the part of me that says, yeah, but, it's both things at the same time.
Great. And that's great awareness. And as you welcome both of those, because my guess is both of those have something wonderful to offer.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great example of how we have multiple answers.
Mm-hmm.
So one of you is like, yeah, that feels really good to take in this sense of I'm good enough as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to work so hard. And then another part of you that probably has accomplished a lot because you made things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really appreciating both of those and noticing that, allowing them both to be here. And so that expanding, like welcoming for them too. So as we welcome our parts here, and sometimes even naming them in with the couple, like as we explain this, there really are 3 answers in the room.
Yep.
So you might say something like, there's a part of me that really just wants to help you fix this, help you to give you, if I could, I'd hand you a toolbox and let you, take this home so you can make things better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then another part of me that knows that, if we can just welcome what's here and not try to fix it, that it's good enough.
Yeah.
So sometimes thinking about if everybody just spoke the truth, like what is the truth we're trying to manage? And so you being able to speak the truth of the cycle or to investigate it and have them help you to create that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can begin to see with this theory of what's under that, what's the longing. Because as soon as we find the longing, it becomes, what everybody wanted. mean, he wants someone to love him as he is. She wants to know him and love him as he is. The way she's doing it is creating more of a rock.
Right.
Him becoming more of a rock under pressure keeps him from being here, keeps him from being available to feeling love, and keeps him from even knowing what he wants to be himself and to flourish. But it's our automatic thing, and we don't know about them until we can bring that awareness to it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I can see that. I can see where I get stuck up with the doing, and that keeps them in their places where they are.
yeah. One of the most powerful things I've done with a couple is they came in and they started their thing, and they started, telling me what was happening in each of them, and then it started to get, feel like the trance was in the room, saying the thing, and I said, well, I just met you both, but I feel like this has been said and done a million times. And I said, so it seems like words get you both going. So I wonder if you'd like to try something. This is the thing I say a lot in therapy. I wonder if you'd be willing to try something. So this is the invitation to the experiment. And so and then they say yes. So I wonder what it would be like if you could tell me without words, if you could express without words. And they said yes. They'd be willing to do it. So they both stood up. We all stood up. And I said, without words, can you both show me the current state of your relationship? And so she turned her back to him and folded her arms, and he reached out to her.
Mm-hmm.
And without words, what do you want the most from your partner? And she took a hold of his ear and held onto her heart. And I think he reached out to her again. And then all of the questions that I wanted to know, without words, how would you like to see your relationship be? And then they can do that together and they can do it separately, but doing that without words, because they can hear it in such a different way. Those old, tired patterns of words that get into that cycle can just hook into that, the window of tolerance, really. It can get them out of the window of tolerance, and then they're in the fight part or in the flight part or in the freeze part, and they are out of the window. So it's good that you're able to see that they can get out of the window of tolerance, and beginning to name that and talk about that with them, about how when they get out of the window of tolerance, what parts are here? And then what is the longing with that part? So all of those different ways of being with the window of tolerance can be different parts of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the longing, it's probably for her, the longing is safety, and probably for him, the longing is connection. Probably for both of them, the longing is connection. But for her first, it probably needs to be safety.
Yeah, it's like he was safe for her, but now he's too safe.
Like she can't feel him.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's probably not too safe, but she probably is trying to elicit something to feel him at all cost. And so she would rather have him be angry or something rather than nothing, because nothing is so lonely or scary.
Yeah. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. Do you have any other questions about that?
I don't think so. I really like the idea of the way you named it. You know, I feel like this has happened a million times before. I think coming back and naming it is a good thing. I think being with them with some curiosity. I've tried some experiments with them, and they're usually pretty powerful. I try to reach with him, which was pretty powerful. The problem is that I'm finding it really hard for them to hold it for very long. If they miss an appointment or cancel an appointment, they kind of go back. Or if there's something that goes on in their life, something stressful happens, then they sort of kind of slip back in a little bit. But this is really, really helpful.
Great, good. All right, well, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it and welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was an awesome case. Thank you. That's so much more fun for me than talking about my cases. I'm happy to do that too. But do we have any other questions before I move back to the slides? We just have a 15 more minutes, I think, or something. Any other questions? Any questions about that or anything anyone would like to add? We have some smart people out there, I know, so if you have anything else you would like to add to it, you're welcome. Okay. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. Yeah. So kind of what we just did, what's it like to be the client? This isn't just kind of another way of putting it, but it's so important in understanding. And before we try to make something happen, to really understand and be with in an open, curious way, what is it like to see the world through their eyes individually and as a pattern? And doing this without judgment in an open, curious way. That's why I like to use the term the agreement. Because people tend to come in with this, right? They're the problem. And if we can just get him to, stop being this way, and if we can look at the current agreement and then without judgment, people can have any agreement they want. And so what are the strengths? Over and underdeveloped, so you're really good at. What are the likely blocks and what needs to be developed? And helping to create a positive future. So for many people, when they come in, they're so into the current pattern, they can't see any other possibilities. And so you might have to say, would you like it if? And that helps to prepare and create. So when we're doing the treatment planning in the beginning, it's good to make sure that you're doing the future template in there, the future desired state. And then the future template is actually a protocol that we use at the end of processing after we have processed the older memories. But having it in the beginning as a part of the treatment of what they would like to see, we're actually seeing a lot of science that tells us that having that, lighting that up in the brain can actually be more likely to make it happen. So understanding, we have a career because it's so powerful for people to feel understood. And so if we can say, oh, of course, no wonder you couldn't compromise, or no wonder you were in this gridlock. Here's what was happening for you, and these are the things that were happening here, and here's that were happening for you. And you were this perfect storm, really. And so the dream catcher is finding out what the dreams are in each person's position. Like, what is the longing, I like to call that? And what's the history of that? And what's a way to honor that? What's the longing under that? Because if they can see that, it becomes so much more about connection and feeling like, oh, they're doing this because they want me or they want to be with me. That's why this is happening. or he's closing down because he's giving up because he wants so much to be here for me, whatever it is. Understanding that helps them to have compassion, and it helps them to see a light, like there's a hope. And the greatest sources of gridlock become the greatest roads to intimacy. As the bigger that is, it's probably, there's also a big root of that, right? And that the important part of the important reason to apply the EMDR model with couples is that we find that the source is somebody else. It's one of their parents, right? Oh, it's your dad's fault. That's so much better than it being about me. And that helps increase compassion too, which increases connection. And then gentleness directly and a gentle startup. How can we be a little kinder to each other? How can we soften? I think that's what Sue Johnson calls it. We soften to the other person. And one of the things that Gottman talks about is one of the biggest predictors for a successful marriage is accepting influence from each other. So, for instance, if she can begin to appreciate how much he wants to please her, how much he wants to be there for her, so much that it's sad for him, and he kind of goes into shutdown because whatever he does isn't good enough. And understanding that can help her see, oh, so he is there, he does feel for me. So the therapist as a neurobiological regulator. Anybody know the song? Regulator. We are the regulator. So we are you being mindful and you having awareness of your part you're bringing in. And sometimes it can be your own mindfulness. One of the cues, I can understand, Jennifer, your answer, because I've been there, we're all here to help, right? And so one of the cues that my answer was here would be, before I had a chair that didn't have a back, I had a chair that had a back. And my back would leave my chair. And I would say, oh, I'm working harder than they are. Or here, I'm trying to do more. I'm trying to get in here and do something. And so I would just put my back on the chair. And how can I just be here with this for just another minute? And study and invite. And that nonviolent communication is just, wow, yeah. So I wonder if you'd be willing to try something, or would it be okay just to bring this into the room? And another interesting thing is for you to take on. I've done this with kids, where I take on their body, their answer. So for the rock, if I was taking on the rock, it would look like this. I don't want to fall off my chair. It would look something like that. My chair is one of those wobbly things. But I would get in the ball and do this, or maybe do this. An extreme version of the rock. And what happens if you invite them to take on? You don't have to call it their answer, or you can if they understand it. And so for her, she would be like this. But how can you be like this? Can't you do? And him doing that. Each of them taking on their answer together, and what happens as they do that. So we want to remember that when we're doing this, we're always talking directly to that part of them, the defense. As we're talking about the answer, we want to always check ourselves. Is there any way we want that to go away? Because if there is, guess what's going to happen? It's going to get bigger. And so we want to ask questions that require looking within. Like I demonstrated a couple of those with Jennifer. So, yeah, what do you notice? And as you bring that up, what happens for you right now? And so that's much more powerful than them talking about the past or talking about what happened or talking about why it happened. The most useless of all, why did that happen? Who knows why that happened? I mean, we can make up all kind of stories. That becomes the story, right? But if we can switch from that to what happens right now as you bring that up, it really slows things down in the room. So maybe when they get into that trance and it's here and it's all swirly and crazy, just to say, I wonder if you would be interested in trying something. I'm noticing a lot of stuff, a lot of energy, a lot of swirling. I wonder what it would be like for each of us to kind of just check in with what's happening for us right now in this moment, including yourself. And then noticing. So, and you might demonstrate for you what, you might demonstrate it first. So for instance, I am noticing kind of right now, as I think about that swirling here, I notice a little bit of a dizziness, like a tendency for my head is feeling like a swimming feeling in my head. And it's kind of hard for me to feel my feet. Most of my energy feels up. And there's almost like a sense of panic or anxiety, like, oh, what's going to happen next? And that thought. And then I have this urge to I'm noticing my shoulders are up and this urge to take a breath. And so demonstrating for them can be powerful. And then asking those questions that help them look within. Awareness increases attunement. So being here, your own awareness of yourself. I remember I don't know if it was the first time, but at a time that I got back, I had an emotional one that was a client who, I didn't see him as a couple, but he was a client, and he was very much attuned to how, he was like the emotional one and the hero. And so he was, could sense everything out there. And he was also very, kind of had some firm boundaries and cut off at times when he needed to be. So different parts of him. But I came back from a 10-day silent retreat, and he was like, wow, it feels like every word you're saying is so important. And I think what he was doing is sensing just my presence. Like I was just here, and there weren't any extra words or even extra animation or whatever was happening before my silent retreat. And so that attunement, this awareness, increases our ability to have an influence on the energy in the room and to have an ability to be here and attune. And so this is I thought about making a flip chart so we can use for our model. Janina Fisher has a flip chart for sensory motor. But you can just, you can just use the internet, or you can use your slides from this. But this is basically a demonstration of what happens when we have an overreaction. So when someone has trauma happen, the memory shuts down and the language part shuts down. So the prefrontal lobes we don't need them. We don't need to be thinking about what to do when we have trauma. And our physiology revs up, right? And then our emotional part revs up. So we're here. And after that's all good, because then it helps us to stay alive, to be responsive, to not have to, to keep ourselves alive. Where it becomes a problem is when that happens and we have to dissociate for whatever reason, then memories become stored in a way that they feel like they're still happening, like they're either happening now or about to happen. And so as our clients are, our couples are flipping their lid in your office, it's because some old memory that hasn't been processed has been activated. So, and it feels like it's here now, and it looks to us like an overreaction. So, if we can see that happening and become curious about it and create safety, so it seems like something here was really important, and maybe it even activated a memory that's stored in a way that feels like it's still happening now or about to happen at any time. Explaining it that way helps increase compassion and helps increase connection. Because if we can then look within, oh yeah, I feel this sense of safety, like not feeling safe. And it when you said, why don't you just do this or whatever just happened? And what does that remind you of? You're bringing it into the model. And it helps to explain that, and this isn't a decision that people make. We don't decide to flip our lids. It's not a decision, it's a reactivity. And that's the whole beauty of EMDR. All right. So it's 3:50. I'm going to go through this couple slides and then see if you have questions. So one of the things that is used in emotion focus therapy as well as sensory motor psychotherapy is contacting what is here in the present moment. And this is a skill that's really you need to practice. So maybe looking up Ron Kurtz or maybe looking up, sensory motor skills and practicing this, because you want to be contacting specifically what you want to deepen. And so there might be times when you contact, oh yeah, a lot of thoughts, huh? And as you do that, what else do you notice? And you're inviting mindfulness about other things. So you might contact a motion or a movement, or so you might contact for your client, Jennifer. I notice as you say that there's this way that your eyes come forward and your hands come forward. Or for him, your head just dropped when you said that, or it seems like you're really feeling hopeless, huh? And putting it into a form of a question then allows them to correct you. And so that by itself, even if you're wrong, it helps them to look within and to say, is that correct or not? And then if it isn't, they get to tell you what is. And so it's all good. And then finding the targets, it's easy with couples. If you're going to be processing, if you decide that you're going to bring that part in, the target is them, right? But what activates them now about their client and what's the worst part of that? And then we can use finding the targets to find the root. And in our learning, in our training, we have a specific way of finding the target under the answer. Because if you're just looking for all the times you felt angry, you're only on the answer and it's not going to be at the root. But if we're looking at under the answer, so how about times when what was more difficult for you happened? So it might be a time when you couldn't protect yourself, or you couldn't set a limit with someone and somebody took advantage of you, or you were betrayed. And that will lead you to the deeper answer. That's a whole nother webinar. So understanding the root, though, also brings compassion, an opportunity for compassion, and processing the decision is a decision of whether you're going to do that together, individually, or refer out for that. And here's a really important thing, noticing more than the story, noticing the way they answer, noticing the body language, noticing the energy in the room, noticing your own reaction. A good test of whether the answer is here is when the answer is here, it's kind of boring. Even if they're yelling at each other, it's not very engaging. And so if you're feeling bored, you might want to say, I wonder what's going on here. And what's the truth under that is what we're looking for. Welcoming and understanding the answer. We've talked about that. And then experiments, evoking what's here. So if I can give you one piece of advice that I think is, in terms of experiments, that's really important, is what we want to experiment with first is inviting what they don't want to be here. Too often, therapists jump to trying to make something happen by doing an experiment of trying to make what's harder for them to happen. Does that make sense? So if we can invite first an experiment of inviting and making bigger the wanting to be, the this of her, what's it like for you to really invite that part of you that's kind of like panicked and wants something here? And what's it like for him to invite that part of him that really gave up and has collapsed here? After we invite that to be here, then we can, then all by itself, so we don't have to work so hard. Really, things will unfold as we invite and welcome and appreciate the answer, which is all of the symptoms, what's here, the worst of it. As we invite it, it automatically just like, oh, well, thank you. Thank you for noticing me, first of all. I've been here for a long time and I've been trying to help. And now I'm going to let you see that maybe there's another option. So that nonviolence and that way of working allows them to say, yeah, but sometimes I like it if my answer of being very independent, if you just really appreciate it, let it be here. Yeah, and so how can we make independent be here in the room? Maybe, like you be the therapist. Here, put on my glasses. You want to sit in my chair? And then you move from chair to chair and you do your own therapy. I've tried that. It is pretty effective, actually. But if we do that and invite it to be here, and then I might say, yeah, but what I really want is for somebody else to be here for me. I want to be able to trust so that somebody else can actually be here in a way that meets me, that I get what I need to. I'll say that on my own. So I don't have to be the Dr. Phil and say, well, how's that working for you doing your own therapy? Dr. Phil isn't working for me, in case you haven't noticed. And so why would we go in the fire? Why would we invite what's true? So a great question is, what is the truth? And what is the thing you're trying to stay away from? Just asking those two questions. What is the truth? And what is the thing you're trying to stay away from? And the reason we want to go into the fire, so our own fire, so the way, maybe I'll just end with this because we're about out of time, because this is an important concept. The way I conceive us working in this model is that we are going into a forest. In the middle of the forest is this burning fire. And that fire is the root, is the real pain that our answers are here to protect. It's the thing we're trying to stay away from the most. So whatever we have done to disprove whatever we believe in this fire here, we build our life around staying out of that. So as therapists, we want to welcome, invite them into the forest. We go along the path, seeing what they need to get closer and closer to that fire. And the path isn't just straight into the fire, is it? It like goes around, and sometimes you might take a detour, and some people need a longer path to get there. And all along the way, we're helping them to build what they need individually to be able to tolerate being with the truth of that fire, or being with what they believe is the truth of that, the real pain that's under our answer. And so if we haven't been in that fire ourselves, it's really hard to invite them in, right? That's why our own work is so important. For us to be able to stand at the edge of the fire and say, it's going to be all right. Come on in. You can handle this now. At the time you couldn't, but you can now. I'm here with you to be with the truth of this. And what comes out of that can be the phoenix, right? That rises out, the freedom that comes out of that. I'm going to stop sharing. I think our time is up. We have 1 minute left. Any last questions or comments anyone has? Any needs? I don't think I sent you the evaluation, so I'll send that out. Do you need to fill that out for Emdria? Okay. Well, I appreciate all of you being here.